Good morning, Manuel. How are you today?
Hola, Mark. Doing great, thank you.
Bienvenidos a Miami from Los Angeles,
Hola from Miami.
coast to coast, and we're really happy and really appreciative that you're partaking in our leadership series here. And I know you will bring some good insights to our business audience, and we thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I hope I can contribute. I think it's a great initiative of yours, and thank you for having me.
No, it's certainly our pleasure. Why don't we start by introducing yourself? Give us a little bit about your background. That would be great.
Well, Mark, I'm born and raised in Mexico City, Mexicano, but happily American as well. I've been in this country for 15 years this time, 4 years the previous time. And it's been an exciting ride from Mexico City to Houston, back to Mexico City, and then I've been in Miami, LA, Dallas, and back to Miami. Started in finance. I have a business background, and the good fortune brought me into this great business of television. As a user, I was never really excited about television itself, and it was not until I saw it as a business that I said, oh, we want to do something interesting here. So I came to this business through the finance backdoor, if I may. It was actually with the Televisa IPO that I was recruited from my previous employment, and then I got into this business. I participated in the IPO, and then I got the job of investor relations, which, as you probably know, is a job in which you actually have a visual of the entire business. And at that point in time, I said, oh, this is a business that I like. This is a business that I really want to develop. And that's how I started my career in television 20-something years ago.
And we see from the background that you are amidst the whole digital media TV world.
Well, you know what? I love it. I love this business. It's a great, the business is great, and then you have the human element. It's a real privilege to be able to reach people and to talk to people on an everyday basis. And people invite you to your living room when you're putting together a TV show or a channel or whatever you do.
Well, you bring up a great point there. I want to get your definition of what leadership is, but there's 2 points there. Number one was you've worked with leaders, including your current boss, that show different leadership styles. I'd like to hear about that. But you're also in a leadership role of the information you provide out there and the impact you have of that information. Could you give us a sense of what is your perspective of leadership?
Well, I mean, not to get too technical, but if you look at, I don't even know what the definition of, if you look at the dictionary, I don't even know what the definition is, but my initial reaction is that, leadership is to get people to follow you somewhere, right? Wherever you're going, I think that leadership is get your people, your team, your family, whomever you're leading to a certain point, right? And I think that then leadership really needs for you to know where is it that you're going. Otherwise, how are you going to get people to follow you there?
Right.
And you have to know how you're going to get there, and then lead by example. So show the example. I'm a big believer in leading by example. I will never ask, my folks here in the office or my kids or by anybody, I would never ask them for something that I wouldn't do myself.
Right.
So, that's how I believe that leadership is. Now, when you make that connection with television, I believe that leadership has to have a certain a sense of responsibility. You're responsible for the team you're leading, and the same thing happens in television. You are responsible for the product you put on the air, for your audience. You have to respect your audience the same way you respect the people that you're leading. And I think that when you give them respect, what you get in return is respect as well. So.
It's interesting. Sorry, it's interesting. I was having this conversation a little while back about the last 50, 60 years. I mean, TV was invented a little bit, tiny bit before I was born, and the last 50, 60 years has been an incredible surge of technology to the point where one person said, "What were they doing the 2,000 years before that?" Basically, to me, where do you see the future going in terms of what consumers are going to watch, how they watch, the whole industry?
Well, look, for a long time, there's been this notion of content is king, right?
Right.
At the end of the day, is the content. For many years, the distribution has been key, and right now, what happens is that the distribution of content is everywhere. I mean, it's in your cell phone, it's in your iPad, it's in your, even the way you get it on the monitor on a television. The television is becoming just a monitor, right? I mean, you can get it via cable, via satellite, via Netflix, there's so many ways. But at the end of the day, content is what drives, in the case of my business, success. For those that are in the distribution business, for those that are in this business, they're looking at different ways to improve the way they deliver the content. In my case, I'm looking at compelling content that now gets distributed in much more different ways than in the past. So believe it or not, that is why you are seeing sort of a golden age for television right now. I mean, look at the number of great hits that are right now out there. So why is that when there's more competition than ever? And I think the answer is simple. Because there are more devices and more ways to get the content, good content finds a way to the consumer easier than ever. In the past, a great show will be scheduled at some point, and if he had some competition, if he had a great show against it, it'll fail. Today, that's not the case. Today, Darwin is present in the television business because the good show is the survival of the fittest. If you have a good show, it even doesn't matter if you program it wrong. If you put it in the wrong scheduling, if you put it in the wrong time period, people will find it. People will let everybody know about it. And there's so many different ways to watch it that a good show will survive.
It's fascinating, and I see there's such opportunity now from what you're saying in, for example, you're in a, lack of a better word, a niche market, Hispanic market, to get information out, but also the opportunity for people, like you say, that may have great talent and never would have been able to get a TV show or some kind of program out there. Not to mention how it even affects politics and what's happening in different countries right now.
Oh.
So the opportunity is unbelievable, right?
Social media, it's unbelievable. I mean, you cannot keep a secret anymore, right? Whatever you say, even this conversation right now, if you tweet it, it's going to be out there, in minutes. So you better watch what you say because you never know where it's going to end.
Well, another friend of mine, a CEO of a company, told me a while back, he said, I used to be able to have a meeting, speaking of leadership, I used to be able to have a meeting, bring my team into my office, have a conversation, heart to heart, what are we going to do, this and that and whatever. He said, now I have a meeting, and before they walk out the door, it's on Twitter.
Well, you know what? When I worked for GE, there was always this notion of never put in an email something that you don't want on the front page of the New York Times, right? It was kind of a premise for the executives to, how to behave, how to make sure. Nowadays, it's not even what you put in an email. It's what you say anywhere, all the time, and it's very interesting because when I was at Telemundo, I was the president of the station group, so I have all the general managers reporting into me, and I always told my GMs, being a general manager, and it goes back to your definition of leadership, it's not a job, it's a role that you have, and you have to play it all the time. You are the leader of the station, from the 24/7. You are the leader of the station. So if you end up in an accident, in a DUI or something like that, it's gonna make it to the newspaper.
Right.
The moment you walk into the station, people are looking at you. They're taking their cues from you. They're looking at how you dress, what's your mood, how do you behave, and that goes back to leadership, and it goes back to what we were talking about, tweeting and everything. Now it's everywhere. I mean, how many times we've seen politicians and famous people just saying stupid things that end up everywhere.
Well, maybe the solution to that is, I won't say any names, just using one phone, email, and don't let anybody see your server, right?
Well,
that's another story.
Another story that I will,
What you're talking about there is really, two words we use a lot is the right fit and right fit leadership. And I do a lot of sports analogies of, the coach has to know how to develop a winning culture, and he's got to produce consistent winning results. And I bring this example up a lot. I had an executive with a pro team that said, we want to win the championship every year, but we know we're not going to win it every year. But one thing we have to have is a winning season every year. And to do that, you got to develop a winning culture, which I guess relates to what you're talking about. Everybody looks at what you're wearing, what you're saying, how you act to develop that winning culture over time, correct?
I couldn't agree more with you. I'm right now in the middle, and we were talking about that when you were here in my office. I'm right in the middle of a turnaround, and turnarounds are very exciting, but they're much harder than everybody really wants to admit.
Right.
And perhaps the first thing that is there is what you were just saying, just changing the culture. I mean, getting people to believe that you can actually deliver on something or execute on something, right? I mean, when you have I don't want to say losing mentality, but when you have, unfortunately, a negative trend, that trend tends to continue. And I personally believe that, first is you got to get the right athletes, right? Going to your sports analogy, you have to get the right athletes. You bring them in, but then bringing great athletes doesn't necessarily mean that you have a great team.
Right.
You got to evolve those individual athletes into becoming a team, and team is overused, right? I mean, it's corny. It's how the teamwork. But at the end of the day, I put it in very simple terms. I like simplicity.
Me too.
It's common goals, right? I mean, it's going back to the leadership. Here's the goal. Here's where you're going. Make sure that everybody knows where we're going. Make sure that everybody knows what role they play in achieving that goal.
Right.
And just communicate, and execute. And then make sure that everybody's holding everybody accountable. There's no room for dead weight. It's not that complicated. But when you deal with human nature, people is adverse to change, and it's hard to change that mentality.
Yeah, and it's an evolving process, isn't it? You can't just do it in a day, because it has to evolve. A word that comes up with leaders all the time that I talk to is trust, and trust evolves, and you don't just say, okay, now I trust you. It's got to be earned. But trust, from what I've heard so many times, what we work with our clients on is, if you can develop trust on a team where people are actually safe talking to each other about anything without taking it personally, that's when you know you're on the right track.
That's exactly right. I mean, I always joke. I mean, I have a lot of little sayings that I repeat to my team over and over. One of them is really the ability to call your baby ugly.
Right.
It's not an easy one. We all love our babies, but if you don't call your baby ugly, you can't fix it. I mean, the very first thing to fix something is to acknowledge that it's broken.
Right.
And you got to look at it and say, okay, why is it that this is broken? But if you don't even agree that it's broken, it's impossible. It's just not going to happen. Change is not going to happen until there is a common, conscious approach to it. And the other one is the pursuing excellence it's got to be deliberate. I mean, it doesn't happen organically.
Right.
There's not such a thing. You have to be deliberately, intense and deliberately pursuing it.
What's funny, the best examples I've heard of coaches or teachers, which are almost the same, is when the player says, or the student says years later, I didn't know I could do what my coach got me to do, which relates to your pursuit of excellence. Sometimes people I believe they're trying their very best, and they may be, but they may be able to have that best even higher.
And you know what? And going back to your question about the definition of leadership, I think that's another one that applies. I mean, a leader is the one that can take the best out of the team that he or she is leading, right? I mean, if you can really push them to the limit, whiplash. Did you see that?
Not yet, but I'm going to. That's pushing to the limit.
You gotta. I mean, he's a little too extreme.
Yeah.
I don't throw things at my people. You will see why I'm saying that. But I think that's one of the main attributes of a leader. That one who is really capable of getting the best out of the team.
Now, how would you? We work a lot with board of director members and boards in general. What's your thoughts on the right fit for a board member to be a leader and to make an impact on a company?
Well, I think that it goes back to the common goal and to understanding what your role is. I mean, a good athlete, I don't think there's a universal good or bad, athlete or executive. I think that sometimes you have people that, of course that was going to happen.
Nice ring, though.
I think that there's always, I'm sorry, I got a little distracted here. So, the right fit depends on the circumstances.
Right.
Right. So somebody might be great at one company because of a specific culture, because of a specific way of performing and working,
mm-hmm.
and might be completely different for another company. Yeah, and let me get some specific examples. Right now, I'm in the complete opposite of my previous company. I used to work for GE, NBC, which is corporate superstructure. And now I work for Azteca, which is very entrepreneurial, very is not as structured
sure.
as a GE obviously is.
Mm-hmm.
So you need different profiles. So going back to your board of directors question, I think you need to know, when you're putting together a board, you need to know what do you need, what different skill sets do you need at the table, and understand who's contributing what. And sometimes you play the role. I think there are different roles to be played.
Exactly.
At GE, I was perhaps the most, maverick, right? Here, I'm the structured one. I'm the guy that is trying to bring, the GE, processes. Over there, I push back on every process because I thought that they were kind of inhibiting creativity. Here, we need a structure because without the structure, you have everybody doing, whatever they want.
Well, it's interesting, though. You learned, in effect, from GE what you needed to do to bring here, I would think. And, with that point, what advice would you give young up-and-coming leaders as to how they should prepare for their future?
Well, I think that you shouldn't leave it to coincidence. I think that you should know where you want to go. That doesn't necessarily that's where you're going to end up going.
Right.
but at least you gotta set up a place where you want to go, and then what are you going to do to get there? Again, that might change, and it's perfectly fine.
Right.
That's what I tell my kids. Look, if you were to tell me, you know, 25 years ago, before I entered in television, that I was going to be here, you know, running a TV network in front of, you know, with all those monitors, you know, constantly looking at it, I would have said, you're crazy. That's not what I wanted.
Well, you don't think I grew up saying I wanted to be a headhunter, did you?
No, I'm sure you didn't. So I think there's got to be a combination of knowing where you want to go, so you put some structure on how you're going to get there, because developing your skill set to get there, I think, is key. I mean, 20 years ago, I knew that I wanted to run a P&L. You know, very early in my career, I realized that as much as I liked finance, I wanted to run a P&L. I didn't know how big it was going to be. I knew that I wanted to be, you know, general manager, you know, CEO, however the title you want to put, responsible of a P&L. So at that point, I had to kind of lay out the plan on, okay, so what am I going to do? I first have to learn the business. You can't run a business without, you know, the knowledge, you know, of the very basics. So I said, well, I have to learn. So I took jobs that were perhaps perceived as much more operational. You know, I was sitting at the corporate office and I said, no, send me to the field. And I deliberately, go back to deliberation, you know, deliberately started developing a skill set that now I can really use in my current job.
No, yeah, it's wise advice. You're planning to meet milestones. You're planning your stepping stones to get to where you wanna go to. Hey, a couple of personal questions.
Okay.
Not too personal, but personal. Kind of 1 to 2 word answers. Do you have a pet or pets?
Yes, bro. My dog is a black lab.
Awesome. We'll have to get a picture of you and him because we're doing a program called Pets and Their Executives.
Oh, well, I am actually very close to my dog.
All right. Do you have a favorite activity or sport?
Sure, I golf. I love being out on the ocean. I mean, you remember my office overlooking Biscayne Bay?
Absolutely. So, all the notes on the window, I do remember.
I have the notes in my window. That's a little crazy. But yes, I really love outdoors. I'm a terrible golfer, but I enjoy golf, and it's a great time to spend with friends. I do it every Saturday, and I love going out in the ocean. I love almost everything around the ocean. I mean, I love diving, cruising, boating, water skiing.
How can you not in Miami? It's gorgeous. Do you have a favorite movie or TV show?
All of them. I mean, the current TV shows are great. I mean, from Breaking Bad to House of Cards to, you know, even Walking Dead has a lot of beyond there's much more than zombies in the show. And something that I'm really enjoying about that show is that it's really helping me connecting with my son, because it's still something that, hey, let's this Sunday it's a new episode of Walking Dead. Let's get together and watch it.
Yeah, there's a lot to that. Do you have a favorite type of music?
I mean, I love all the music. I mean, I like jazz. Not an expert on it, but I like jazz. You know, I lived a lot of time in Texas, so I can deal with country music very well. But, I love opera. I think opera is a great combination of performing art as well as the music of it.
How about food? Do you have a favorite type of food you like to listen? Do you like to eat while you're listening to jazz?
I love food. I'm a foodie, and I love my wines. Food. I mean, I really like all the different kind of foods, and I'm the type that I'm always looking for the new restaurant and everything. And I collect wines. Don't have a huge cellar, but I have my cellar. Mm-hmm. I particularly like red wines, Brunelos, and Spanish wines.
Well, they told me once that Cabernet is the best wine for helping to prevent Alzheimer's. So as long as I can keep remembering to drink it, I like it.
I like Cabs as well. I don't have that many of them, but I have a few good Cabs. So next time we'll get together,
Sounds good. You, me, and Mike will get together and we'll catch up. How's that?
Yes.
Hey, listen, thank you so much for participating. It's a wonderful conversation, and we appreciate it.
You know what? It was very enjoyable because you pushed me to think of a lot of things that you do, but you never stop to kind of think about it, right? So it's great. I highly appreciate it, and I'll send you a picture of Bro because I also like photography. So I have some good pictures.
All right, we'll highlight you and Bro in our Pets and the Executives thing.
I'll send you Bro without me.
No, we need him with you. That's the whole point. Hey, muchísimo gracias, and we'll talk to you soon.
Take care. Thank you, Mark. Bye bye.